Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the services. Just before we start, can I just remind you to read the inside of the front cover, because it always has the reason we're here. And the one thing that really impresses me is the last bullet point, which says that this committee amplifies the voices and concerns of the public and acts as a key mechanism connecting the public to the democratic process. And I think that's so important that we keep that in mind. We're not just here to moan, we are here to see if we can put forward and improve. I'm Carol Coburn, Councillor Carol Coburn. I chair this committee. On my left is Councillor Philip Townsend, who is my very able deputy chair. And if I could ask the officers at the top to speak first and tell us who they are, and then we'll meet the others as we get down to them. So,
I'm Kimberly Soane, Interim Senior Democratic Services Officer and Clerk in the meeting.
I'm James Dealing. I'm a Scrutiny Officer from Guildford Council.
Julian Higson, I'm Interim Strategic Director for Housing, Communities and Environment.
and Julian's promised to work with us on future agendas, yes, for this committee. So we can see if we can get the agendas beefed up a little bit. We are on a brief agenda tonight, partly because of Purdah. A lot of items were removed, but as the football's on, I'm sure all of you are delighted. So moving straight on to apologies for absence and substitution, Kim.
We have apologies from Councillor George Hess and from Councillor Peter Clark. No substitutes.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting, they've all been published. Are you happy that I sign those as a true record?
Great.
Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest to declare in relation to anything on this agenda? Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the public, Kim?
None received from members of the public or from members, Chair.
Thank you very much. That speeds that up a bit, which moves us straight on to the committee forward programme. I always think we really start this at the going forward. There doesn't seem to be much point in looking backwards. You know, you can do that in your own time. So it's page 11, I think. It's page 11 of the main agenda item. It's part 3 of 4 upcoming items. And you'll see what we have today, the update on health and wellbeing, which is Katie and the team. And then we've got some things already penciled in. The 8th of July is not happening now, the joint meeting, that's been postponed. But we do have some topics for future meetings in September. And we have some others that at the moment are, what should we say, in the air. Maybe they'll come to us in September. One of the things I think we would like to do at some point really is the air quality.
Sure.
We seem to have left that. Oh, yes, please.
Thank you. Sorry, it was going so quick, wasn't it? And then I started. Okay, if I can refer you to page 11, the chair's covered the first 6 items there. The 7th item, the revised statement of community involvement, that came to the committee on the 23rd of January and the report was noted. So that goes to the exec on the 9th of July and full council on the 16th of July. The Farnham Park Sang, I've contacted Matthew Ellis and he has nothing to add to the update there, so it's still TBC. Item 9, the air quality reports. That will be ready, hopefully, when it's come back from DEFRA for the 19th of November scrutiny committee meeting. That will then only go to the executive if you make recommendations on it. And then item 10 over the page, on page 12, the homelessness prevention strategy. That was agreed by full council on the 12th of December last year, so that needs to come off your work programme. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any comment on the work programme? As I keep saying, it is your agenda, so if there is something that you think we're not looking at in depth. And the joy of having a bit more time is looking at the corporate performance report and you see what a range of items this committee covers. And if there is something you'd like to do in more depth. Councillor Rubini.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wondered about the last one, the homelessness prevention strategy. does it go somewhere to say how it worked? Because I'd obviously be very interested in its impact.
Can anybody answer, councillor Rubini?
Thank you, councillor. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think one of the things we do is to scrutinise delivery of the strategy every year. So I think in tandem with that, we ought to be able to bring that here. I don't know what the date is of that offhand, but it'll see, I'll absolutely covenant to bring that back here.
Yeah, if you could, please, I'd be very interested. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? As I say, we haven't had any task and finish groups, but then really we've been so under-resourced, it would have been difficult to run. But that's still an option, and I still think we've done some very successful ones in the past. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered about the corporate anti-social behavioural policy, how that's going.
Can anybody answer that question? Oh, thank you, Katie.
Hi, yeah, it's currently in its sort of very first rough draft, but it's going to be sort of coming out for consultation. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll start sort of sharing it and consulting. Yeah.
There really are some interesting and important pieces of work being done, aren't there, due to come out. So we must make sure they get the scrutiny they deserve. Does anybody else have any other comment on that? And as I keep repeating, please, if you have an idea, whack it into us and then we'll see if we can put it on the agenda. Anything to do with our remit, which is of course delivering services. We don't deal with money, as I keep saying, and we don't deal with housing, which is rather sad. Is everyone quite happy then to move on from that? The committee forward programme, recommendations to consider their work programme. We've had a very helpful précis from the officer, and basically it is just ongoing. Just keep telling me if there's something that you think we should be looking at. Moving on then to the next item, which is item 7, the corporate performance report. Very often this is squeezed because we've got such a long agenda, but do feel free to make comments because it really is very interesting. Jenny, do you want to, where's Miss Jenny? Oh, you're there, right, you've moved.
Thank you, Chair. So this evening, this committee will be scrutinising the corporate dashboard, which is on page 22 of your agenda pack, and then the services areas are found from page 54 onwards. If there's any questions on those specific areas and the performance of those areas, I'm happy to take them away and come back with written answers if they can't be answered. We also currently looking at a new format for the performance report. So I would welcome any comments or anything you would specifically like to see in the future version, which will be effective from Q1 onwards. Yeah, and also perhaps to consider in future meetings, if questions are submitted in advance, then we can either request that relevant officers are present at the meeting or that answers are submitted for the meeting to just encourage more discussion, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you, Jenny. I have to say, I found this really interesting, just reading the list of things that each, department was doing, because very often, we just don't get to hear about it. And it's only when it comes into this committee and you say, gosh, I didn't know we were doing all that. And just to see the list of things, let's go through from our, the things that come under our remit, which starts on page 36 of the report, or 54 of the main papers, depending on what you're using. So really we start at number 10, don't we? Regeneration and planning policy. We haven't got a planner here, but if there is a question or a comment on any of that, we've got the economic development first of all. Moving on to the the progress thing. And I think one thing you notice this time, I mean, apart from the ones that haven't really kicked in yet, is that there's a lot more green than we've sometimes had, which is really good news. There are areas later on in other services. Does anybody want to say anything to do with the planning and regeneration? Yes, Councillor Austin.
Thank you. It was about the lounges agreement for lease. That it said it was targeting a planning application submission Q1 24-25. So has that happened now? So that's page 56, corporate projects.
Don't know that anybody can answer that. So, Andy, no, does anyone know anything about that? Sorry. No, it's just that, you know, it's you know, usually we don't get leases coming into this committee, and we don't have an officer. That's what I'm saying, who can give us a definitive answer. So,
Yeah.
Jenny, if you could.
I can take that away and
Thank you.
provide the committee with a written answer. That's okay?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think we probably would have seen it because it would have had to come to planning, would it? Because we own the building. So I'm presuming it hasn't yet. It would have had to come to the
I
planning
haven't
committee.
seen anything at all
No.
about it at planning
So
or
that
anywhere
is
else for that
Q3
matter.
now.
I can comment on that.
Yes, please
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah, councillor, I can comment on the planning side. It's we're planning application hasn't been submitted yet. Obviously there was a public consultation which was both, I think, in the particular location of where it is, but also downstairs here in the town hall. So which was available for people to look up for a while. But I think a detailed planning will be going in later this year.
Yes, by all means, come
Just
back.
different from what it says in the report. Page 56, the following activity took place on the various projects below. Agreement for lease was signed. The team has been preparing a planning application with a targeted submission date Q1 24.
Yes, that is obviously the end of June, with a time for a target of that planning to go in. So I can't comment on whether that's actually on target for the end of June, but I know that that's in preparation.
Sorry, yeah, so but that's Q3. I'm just checking.
No, Q1 24 is April, May, June.
Oh, I see what
24.
you're saying. Sorry, I was being a bit slow there. That makes sense now. Okay, as we haven't seen it now, so okay, thanks. Yeah, if you could let me know. Thank you.
Councillor Keane?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment. Page 55 under economic development. I'm really pleased to see that the Godalming Mobile Youth Service is regularly attended. I don't know who takes that one on, but I think this is a fantastic thing that you're doing there, because we are watching that very closely and from Hazelmere, because we'd like to somehow at some stage link in when we've got a building to link in with. So yeah, it's all credit to you. Very, very good. Thank you.
As I say, when you read through this, there was a lot of good news. I mean, it really was. So it was a very uplifting document altogether. I'd like to move on fairly quickly, but Councillor Busby?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the call for sites, so that came to a close at the end of March, and I've not heard anything particularly on whether we had a good response to that, and just wondering when that might be sort of become...
That somebody can answer that, but it's coming later on the agenda under the planning and...
Yeah, Councillor Busby, there's going to be a members briefing coming up that will outline the local plan, call for sites, and everything like that. It's in the process of being set up.
Yeah, the planning's, you know, the two bits are very separate when it comes to the what we're reading. Yeah, so we'll have a look when we get to that bit. Does anybody anything else on planning and regeneration, or can we move on to leisure services and building control and that sort of thing, which I have to say I found very interesting, the change to the building control, because you get so used to it. And I'm delighted that we're training these people up, and they've got a new name, which we've all got to learn. So We can't call them what we used to call them in the nicest possible way. So it's good news, and also good, obviously, for Waverley Training Services. Does anybody have any comment on Kelvin's commercial services report, or indeed the indicators afterwards? Everyone quite contented to accept that? So moving on to community services on page 45 or 63. Once again, a lovely summary to get us to understand. Sam, would you like to say something to your report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to update on the fact that a lot of the community services work is in context around wider issues that are going on in the country. Just to draw your attention to the fact that the cost of living crisis remains. The Household Support Fund tranche has begun, the final one. And I think probably the biggest thing to draw your attention to is the issues around Careline. So Careline is a very needed service. It's to help people live in their homes for longer. But what we would flag is that there are increasing costs in equipment and changes in equipment. So the move and the desire to become digital is outstripping the analog model. However, the people that need the service are not quite ready for digital in many situations. And the Bramley water situation has just kind of exemplified the fact that, you know, when you ask BT what's their response to phone lines not being available, it says, don't worry, we'll send a dongle. Well, Mavis at 92 is not going to be able to deal with the dongle. I mean, Sam can't deal with the dongle. So do you know what I mean? It's that understanding of the community and what the needs are. So it is an ever evolving model of care, and artificial intelligence is getting better and better all the time. So there will come a point where there will need to be an overview of what exactly Careline is here to deliver. So that's just something that I'll probably be updating you on going forward.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Just briefly. I mean, I've got a 91-year-old friend who wouldn't have a clue about how to use any of this. She's got a Careline, and providing that somebody speaks to her, she can get through what she needs. But I think, you know, it maybe go too fast, too soon, and I think there's an awful lot of training required. And especially with the managers of the homes or the retirement places, they're going to need to be talking to the residents an awful lot. And I really can't see many of them taking that in, to be honest, and that's in the kindest way.
We brought this up at the resources which I subbed on last week, because, you know, and I'm always saying it, life is incredibly difficult. Even if you're young, you've got all your faculties, you haven't got any form of disability or learning difficulty, it is still very, very hard. And then when you add in all the other difficulties that people have, whether it's age-related or health-related and all of that, I mean, absolutely right. We have to look at who we're serving, not just how we're doing it. Councillor Austin?
Thank you. It was just to reiterate actually what you were saying. I must take 1 or 2 calls every day from concerned neighbours and family members who are very concerned that their elderly relatives are not able to be contacted. And fortunately, we've got a good network of people who are going around and checking on these people. But it's absolutely critical that that it's dealt with, because they, as you say, they don't know what a dongle is, and actually it's not working. Even a temporary mast is not working at the moment. And actually it would be useful for us to have a talk about it, to maybe identify if there are any just in that specific instance, because I think I'm probably dealing with it at one end and you are at the other end. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Rubini?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Very simple question. You've got in here that 100 units will arrive on the 13th of May and 50 in June. So have they arrived and are they now in place?
They have arrived, which created quite a party atmosphere because we've been waiting for them for a long time. So yes, they have arrived. But again, you've picked up on something, Councillor, that's absolutely right. That the supply chain is really suffering across the country generally. And again, that's what's encouraging people to move to digital, because analog are becoming outdated, and to repair them is more expensive, and then you're waiting for parts and all the rest of it. So we are always in a constant flux of waiting for equipment. But I'm pleased to say this lot came. So rock on. Yeah, thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you for that. Does anybody any other comments, or can we move on to environmental services? Number 13 on page 49 or 67. Again, we haven't got the officer here. I don't know whether anybody else could speak on his behalf, but I'm sure you've all read the report. And of course, we get onto some red boxes when we get to this. We always do. Richard, you're sitting there. Are you able to sort of help us at all on this?
Unfortunately not, Chair. I'm no longer responsible for waste services, I'm afraid.
I lose track.
I've lost touch.
I
with
do
it.
apologise. I'm sure you've moved on to something much more senior.
I am responsible, Chair.
Oh, right. But you don't know anything
But I
either.
may not have the detail.
I mean, this is something that I think we at some point might discuss in more detail, and that is really, you know, not how we're doing it, but what we should be doing, if we can be doing it better, you know, just generally. And we raised this, I think Mark was at the meeting, we raised it to do with the Surrey Environment Network and all these other things, to see, you know, how green we are and how green we should be, and whether or not we're educating people or encouraging people in the right way. So I think this is an issue where, you know, we ought to just be questioning what we're doing. But, you know, I mean, when you look at the figures, they're not disastrous. The fact that they're flashing at red, it's always to do with the, you know, the number and rather than the percentage. So does anybody have any questions? Well, we haven't got anybody here who can answer too many questions. Julian might be able to, but certainly if anybody wants to say anything. Councillor Busby?
Thank you. It's just a comment rather than a question, but just the fact that we have hit this target of 40 out of 100,000 missed bin collections. So we've commented previously that perhaps that target was unrealistic, and that it was perhaps unfair to the team that they were getting reds on the dashboards for sneaking over the top of it. But we've actually hit that target, which is a surprise and really, really good. So congratulations.
Councillor Keane?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just on, I don't know whether this will cover this. I hope it does. And that's the emptying of the litter bins around the borough. There's been 2 that I've had quite severe complaints on, and that one hadn't been emptied for 3 months, and there were bags and bags of dog excrement just lying around. The smell was horrendous. Thankfully, I did speak to Environmental and eventually got it sorted out. But it seems to me that some of the bins are missed on more than one time, some a couple of months even. And I think, you know, with the fact that we've got so many dogs, you know, in the borough, that the amount of dog waste that goes into these bins is horrendous. And I personally would like to see more bins for dog waste rather than going into general bin waste, because people just throw the bags anywhere. Now, if we could have a dog waste, especially outside community centres and places like that, where there's just one bin, and believe me, there's a lot of dog bags. So just a thought that maybe we could, I have asked before that maybe we could actually look for dog waste bins. Thank you.
So any officer? Yes, good. We can answer that.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. Clearly, it is an issue. A couple of things. One, I will take away the request and discuss that with the head of service. Secondly, if you want outside the meeting to let me know of any bins you've got particularly concerns about, I will double check to make sure they're on the list.
Can I just say, we used to have terrible problems with open bins on the Bourne Green. So we got bigger and closed bins, you know, to stop the foxes getting in. But you're right, they look awful when people put too much stuff in, and they, in a funny way, they look worse than the open bins when they're overflowing. So, you know, it really is an issue, and it's really a timing thing, isn't it? Because a nice weekend, I mean, every single bin on the Bourne Green is overflowing. You know, dog poo as well, but just people. Yes, Councillor
If I could
Gadget.
just come back on that, sorry. The fact of the matter is that it is a health and safety issue with children playing around these bins. And we all know about dog excrement and damage to eyes and things like that. So if these bins aren't emptied, you know, it's something that we should be very mindful of.
Well, we'll make sure that we keep an eye on that and keep the pressure on Julian and everybody else who's going to take it forward for us. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Well, firstly, just to reiterate what Councillor Keane has just said, I must get 2 or 3 emails or messages a week from people on the Downs link in Bramley who are just crying out for more bins and then more dog bins. Someone comes down and sprays the poo with pink paint, but then no more bins appear. And I'm told that the reason for that is it's a deterrent, but the poo is still there, the dog poo. So the strong request is, rather than someone come and spray it with paint, could they provide us with some more bins? That's the first thing. And then just secondly, I mean, I recognise this is not an ordinary situation, but we do now have an additional recycling collection every Saturday in Bramley for the huge volume of plastic bottles that we are getting through, and will continue to, I think, for at least a month going forwards. But it did take us 3 weeks, and to me, 2 failed attempts and quite a lot of toing and froing to get that to happen. And I know someone didn't, in the end, we found out the contractor Biffa had not been instructed by the council. And I did get an apology, and I accept that apology, but just flagging that we need to be more responsive in situations like that. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I sincerely hope we don't get too many situations like that. And my heart goes out when it was Godalming and the Hazelmeres had problems, and now Bramley. I mean, really, it's an unbearable sort of situation to be in. Julian, you want to come back?
Yeah, Councillor, I mean, I need to reiterate the apology about the misunderstanding we had with the contractor about not getting round to collecting those bins. Clearly, both sides thought we're waiting for the other, and that shouldn't have happened. So apology for that. We have covenanted to keep now doing those Saturday collections as long as they're needed.
Sadly, I fear we will be needing them for a little while yet.
Right, does anybody else have any further comments on dog poo? Or could we sort of move on to planning development? And I can't find what I read earlier today that answered Councillor Busby's question. I'm obviously just making it up as I go along. There was somewhere I did read about a general thing, and I can't see it in the report. Well, earth did I see that? About the call for sites. There was somewhere in all of this. I can't find it. Anybody else find it?
Not in the planning policy section, Chair. Perhaps it's,
Where's
or is
that?
there somewhere else?
Could you give me a page?
Page 55.
Oh, we're going back. Sorry, I'm just feeding Councillor Busby for false information. Oh yeah, yeah. So sorry, it was there, not so. Do you want to make a point again, Councillor Busby? Are you quite happy? Right. Yeah. I think it's important that you know, we all do keep pressing to get this information, because anybody doing a neighbourhood plan, having to update that, I mean, we do need information on these things. So I think it was it right at the end of July, the 30th or 31st, wasn't it? So make sure we all go along to that and get ourselves up to speed. One thing I did mean to say tonight, I went to Dunsfold Park to the consultation that's current. I don't know if anybody else has been. Those of you who are new to the council will not know how long this has been going on, but it has been going on for years and years and years. When we first gave permission for Dunsfold Park, the idea is that it would stop all the speculative development around Cranley and Alfold, and then, you know, the years passed by. So I went along not too hopeful. Well, first of all, I thought I'd missed the roundabout, but you can't miss the roundabout, I discovered. You know, it's an enormous roundabout with a great big sign saying Dunsfold Park, because I've always entered it through Stovall's Hill before. And then went up Canada Avenue, which I went to the opening of in January, was it? And it was just so nice to see a really good team of people wanting to get going on Dunsfold Park. Over the years, when it was first came in, it was going to be very green. Jim McAllister of the Rutland Group is just a naturally very, very green person. And then we've had an SPD on it. We've had Garden Village status awarded, but no houses at all. So the good news is that they are going to come in for some reserve matters this summer, and I think an application, a fuller one in 25. But, you know, we're off basically, because of course we haven't had any houses from Dunsfold Park in our 5-year housing land supply. We put them in great anticipation, and then they never materialised. So that was really good news. So we know one site that's coming forward. So hopefully we can, I don't know what number, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see as it comes in. So moving on to 14, planning development. And it's quite extraordinary when you turn from page 53 or 71 and turn the page and you see this mass of green. Isn't it lovely, you know, to see that? So I have to say, you know, there's been some improvement definitely in service. Still got a terrible churn of officers, but they're, you know, the actual service is being delivered better. Councillor.
Thank you. It was just to obviously we're doing a lot better on enforcement cases actioned within 12 weeks of receipt. So that's great. But I just feel like on the ground it doesn't feel that way. I'd love to know exactly how those stats are arranged, because we've got a number of enforcement cases which I feel like have been droning on for ages and ages in Bramley and Monash. So I'd just love to know, you know, does it accept and allow, you know, an extension of time, or does it 12 weeks dead?
I don't know that we've got anyone sort of competent enough to say. We did have, if you remember, a briefing on enforcement with Victoria, and it was really interesting. But the fact is that everything is stacked in the applicant's favour. They get, you know, to challenge everything. And the classic one is the one in the Bourne, in my ward, where they have built completely the wrong house, too big, wrong place, wrong materials. I mean, you couldn't get it more wrong if you designed it to be wrong. And we've taken every action we can. We've refused applications. They've gone to appeal. And the enforcement has been with the inspectorate for a good 18 months. And we are absolutely stymied. You know, the system says that they can, so when looking question an enforcement notice, they can go to appeal, and they do. And, you know, it's really very frustrating for all of us. But perhaps, I don't know quite where to go from there, because Victoria did give us, we got notes on it, didn't we, as well? Or am I making that up as well? Did we get some slides on it?
It's more about how the stats are calculated is the question.
Jenny might be able to help us on that.
I can't answer it specifically right now, but I will find out how it's calculated, and I will come back to you or to the committee with a written response.
Thank you.
I know they were very under-resourced, and, you know, that really was a problem. But I have to say, you know, locally we have got quite, you know, we have had some successes. And it's usually in the end with people being given an enforcement notice and they actually don't appeal it. You know, they work out with the officers what is realistic and what they can achieve. It's when it gets into the next level that it is so frustrating when, as I say, they start appealing it, because then, you know, we're just in the hands of the inspectorate. I mean, how it can take you 18 months to decide, I have no idea, but it's not for me to know. Councillor Rubini?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Page 64, community health and wellbeing. It's obviously hit a lot of headlines with suicide of young people, and we had the mayor who promoted suicide among males. So it's obviously a very important topic. Can anybody update me on what's going on now? I see that you've started with young people and it's been agreed to have a focus on mental health across all ages and demographics. Is that going on? Have we proceeded with that? Because it is also, as a Surrey County councillor, with SEND programmes falling apart and other things, we seem to be picking up the pieces that other authorities should be doing. Have we got the capacity to do that?
Jenny, you're going to answer?
If I may, Chair, Councillor, we've got a presentation that kind of covers this in a bit, but I would say that you're absolutely right. The suicide prevention, the children and young people, it is happening. Guildford and Waverley as a partnership, which I'll talk about in the next item, I think, is doing their best to sort that. But you've absolutely nailed it in the fact that the biggest problem we have is the capacity of statutory services. And that is at its absolute maximum. And there isn't the capacity to meet. I mean, for a perfect example, CAMS has an 18-month waiting list. And as a local authority, that's not for us to deal with. It's for county to deal with, Surrey County. But of course, they are absolutely on their knees with resource and funding. So we are doing what we can at a community level, at an NHS partnership level as part of the ecosystem. But we can't have that much effect or influence on the statutory situation. And that is where, if you like, the point of failure, unfortunately, lies for people who are struggling. And that's not just with children and young people, that's across the board. So we had a very interesting meeting this morning, for example, and the police now, certain colleagues within the police force around railways and whatever, when we're talking about suicide prevention, don't even refer into mental health services anymore because there are no beds. And it's just a blank no, because they can't get there. Farnham Hospital can't, they're not taking on new cases. So the risk is in this space of non-statutory involvement. So you're absolutely right to analyse that. And then it's a situation of where the borough sits in relation to the statutory services. And I don't have good news on that. I'm really sorry.
Not trying to stop debate,
No,
but we
please.
are having a presentation on health and well-being. That's our main item, really. So I don't want to get into a debate on this at the moment. Councillor Keane?
Yes, I don't want to debate it, but all I would say is that from my knowledge of children and young people with autism and spectrum problems, they are severely let down severely. And I say that from my own experience. But it would be very interesting if when you have this chat, all those things can be brought out so that we can understand just how bad the situation is, certainly with Surrey. I would say it is abysmal, absolutely abysmal.
Can I just say, as a former teacher, it has been abysmal for years, and not just in Surrey, believe you me. It's really been a disaster area. Can we move on to the last one, which is Richard? Richard Homer, before you tell me, how do you pronounce your title? I can do the head of, and I can do the services, right? Oh, for goodness sake. I can't keep up with this. No, it's that word regulatory. I never know whether it's regulatory, whether it's regulatory.
It's Assistant Director of Regulatory Services. That's how I say it.
Regulatory, right. Thank you, Assistant Director of Regulatory Services. Do you wish to say anything to your report?
I think there's an awful lot there, Chair. If I start to go through it, we'll be here all evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody's got any queries on any part of it. It obviously demonstrates the vast amount of work that the teams that work for me are doing to make everybody safe in the environment they live in.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it was fascinating just reading the list of what they do. And as I say, very often, you know, we get a bit hooked on sort of planning and bins because they're the things that we deal with on a daily basis. But there's so much more going on in the background, as you say, to keep people safe, to keep things ticking over. Certainly when you read the list on page 76 or 58 of it, you get a real flavour of what the team has been doing. And then you're into your environmental enforcement, emergency planning. There's a huge amount that comes under your brief, Richard. Does anybody wish to make any statements here apart from, thank goodness we've got Richard and his team? Councillor Ross.
Thanks. Just to note that again, sorry to sound like a broken record, but the Bramley incident is not noted in the report, and that is significant. I mean, I've been working on that with Jeanette for a year now, and obviously things have got a lot worse recently and is requiring a lot more resource. I just can't see it in the report. I mean, just to reiterate that, I mean, it is a moving situation at the moment, but it's now being chaired by Waverley Borough Council as a recovery group, and I think we just need more information as to what's happening. Would be my feedback generally. Thanks.
I'm sure that's been noted. Who's dealing with the Bramley thing? You know, who's chairing that group that's dealing with it?
Chair, if
Yeah.
I can, excuse me, I am now chairing the recovery group, and there are regular updates provided for all councillors, ward councillors and the executive after each recovery group meeting. There's another recovery group meeting on Friday, and another update will be provided after that.
Right, so look out for the update. And does anybody else have any other comment, personal or not? In that case, I think we can move on to the final item, which touches on obviously what we've been highlighting, or what Councillor Rabin and Councillor Keane have been highlighting. So I don't know who's going to do it. You can introduce yourselves. Sam, you could introduce the team, and are you introducing the report? Or
I
showing us
am.
the
I'm doing the
slides?
presentation and I'm now having a technological breakdown. So I just want to be able to share the entire screen and so that you can see it. And I'm not sure that I can do it. So I would welcome if Kim could come and help me. In the meantime, I'm Sam Hutchison. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Services. And I have the absolute pleasure of working with Jane and Katie, who are in our team alongside a few other colleagues. But these two lovely ladies particularly lead on the health and wellbeing element. So whilst this is, oh, look, see? Well done, girl. Oh, love you. Thank you. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you some basic insights and intel on where we are with community services, health and wellbeing, and particularly the fact that we have formulated a Guildford and Waverley health and wellbeing partnership. And I'll talk you through that if that's okay. And then any issues and questions that are definitely going to arise from that, we can hopefully talk through. The presentation intends to be very honest about our challenges. I've also tried to make it such that you'll see a few pictures and all the rest of it, because there is an underlying desire from us as community to, in fact, separate ourselves in this Guildford and Waverley Health and Wellbeing Partnership as being community-led and people-focused, not patient-focused. And that's very important in how we operate as a local authority. So, as a council generally, just to introduce this, we have been working in the preventative space for a long time, as you know. our key purpose here in Waverley is to empower the voluntary sector as well, to be an immense provider for the services that are important to the community. And Waverley has a very strong history of working with the community and the voluntary sector. And that goes down to a lot of the work that Katie and Jane do to the commitment to the most vulnerable. Having said that, we are in the modern world part of an ecosystem of preventative care. And this is where this partnership has come from. So we note that this preventative system of care that is involving a system-based approach of everybody, so county, health, local authorities, etc., is because the system is in crisis. And one unit can't deal with it alone. Having said that, when you've got multiple units trying to fix it as well, that brings its own challenges and hair dye. I think demand, we would all agree, is higher than ever for a variety of reasons in every aspect of health. Physical, mental, aging population, all of those things are contributing to it. And there is still a massive impact from COVID, and not necessarily health impact of COVID, but system impact. And that is why our health partners have drawn together this desire to work in a system that's a bit more strategic and operational driven. So what I hope to show is the formation of alliances that is happening to target and work together for the sake of the community. Now, what I'm also going to be very clear about is we all as partners have different outcome intentions, and marrying those is a challenge. But that's what we hope the partnership is trying to do, especially the Guildford and Waverley Health and Wellbeing Partnership. So, just as you know, to give a bit of background to you, the Guildford and Waverley landscape, there are a couple of maps here, as you can see, very different places. Oh, do I have to do it a different way? Sorry about this, people. No.
We need to go back one.
I'm so sorry about this.
Left, what's that? So you're going left.
Oh, so am I going left instead of right? Sorry.
There we are.
And
and
it doesn't change up there.
It's not showing on there.
Yeah, we've moved. So it's seeing that now. Maybe it can't do the animation.
You should be able to.
Yeah. Maybe I just need to go through that. Yeah. Okay.
Just
So,
go
yeah,
down
I'll go
the-
down that way. Fabulous. So apologies for that. You see the two maps of the areas, and just to explain that there are two ICPs across both Guildford and Waverley, which is an integrated care partnership. So you will have in Guildford and Waverley, the main part is Surrey Heartlands that covers the most place of both boroughs. But both boroughs also have a pocket that belong to Frimley Integrated Care Partnership, and that is Farnham in Waverley, and it's Ash and Ash Vale in Guildford. Now, they are two very, very different ICPs and two very different spaces. And what that sort of entails for us is the fact that we've got to try and marry this together and not leave anybody out. And I think being absolutely clear, Frimley ICP covers Slough. So that is going to be and is their main focus, and the Royal Berkshire is their main focus, a little bit with Frimley Park. With the Surrey Heartlands, Royal Surrey is the big focus, and the sort of system at place surrounds that. So we struggle to make sure that Farnham and Ash are included, and we've done a lot of work to make sure that that happens. But the rest of the borough is covered by the Surrey Heartlands. Now, due to their crisis and the health crisis, they have asked us to work together to deliver this. And you'll see that it talks about working alongside local people and communities, established integrated neighbourhood teams specific to the local population, to create a clear development plan about the sustainability of primary care, which is the GP services, and to develop a single system-wide approach to integrated urgent care. Now, just by saying that to you, you can tell that that's NHS language. It took us about 3 weeks to decode it, I think, to understand exactly what does that mean. Now, as part of our system, as Together, it is health directed because the ultimate aim is to reduce hospital admissions. So there's always going to be that clinical element of what the end game is. But our part in it is very much in the preventative space. So we, as a local authority, deal with this first block only. Now, the irony is that that first block should really run through all four to make it a success, because you only make health a success through the community and the people that are the patients. But we can't build Rome in half an hour. So we are focusing, and we are the lead as a local authority in both boroughs, as the lead on working alongside people and their community. So what that looks like is it translates into this focus, which is that we deal with working together to support thriving communities. And that means that there is a co-design, a community-led, a co-production, and a look at capacity about how we help people before they get ill, and also what we can play and the role we can play in when they are well after being ill. So that sort of look around hospital discharge. The inequalities of access to health, the advancing of community services and integration, and the My Care My Way are health orientated, and we step away from that. Now, to be perfectly frank, we had a nightmare with this. I mean, this is us. I'm not joking. I didn't understand what they wanted from us. I didn't understand. We had so many challenges, to be perfectly frank with you. And the biggest driver is health is a different culture. It is a different culture in delivering. It's a different culture in staff management. It's a different culture in results and outcome and data analysis. If any of you have ever been part of an NHS slide, it is huge. It's massive. You know, what can you cram on it? And we're not like that, and we don't want to be like that. But what came about from it in developing the partnership was they actually wanted more of us. They knew that the way they speak, the way that they talk, the way their contextual development and information misses people. At the end of the day, I want to talk to a GP. Why can't I talk to a GP? If I can't talk to a GP, where can I go and who's going to help me? I'm not interested in anything else. And that is the voice of the community. So we brainstormed with our colleagues in Guildford, and it was about how we now can become a position of influence in the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, rather than being a recipient of constant health demands to help them fix the broken system. And I don't mean to sound horrible in that. It's just to be realistic in what we can bring. We can't solve A&E. There's no way. But what can we do to help stop people getting there? So we were part of that wider determinants of health space, which is where a local authority should be, because that's where we have the influence. And also we were very, very concerned about, this is a very strategic discussion. How is it going to operationally look? What's it going to look like? What's going to happen? What's going to be done? And who's got the resources and the money? I still don't know the answer to that 100%. It was also very important to us to keep the sovereignty of Guildford and Waverley as places separate, even though they are in the partnership and the Alliance of Health, and that many of our voluntary sector cover both Guildford and Waverley, but they are two very distinct communities and two very distinct approaches, even though there are some common threads. The way we deliver is different, and we wanted to keep that. And again, I reference a meeting we had this morning about suicide prevention. It's very easy to slip into Guildford all the time because it's a town, or all the time because it's by the Royal Surrey. And we're constantly trying to pull people back and say, hang on a minute, where is Waverley in this? So they were our challenges. And it turned around when they said, Sam, will you be the senior officer for the Thriving Communities bit? I said, yes, I will, if I control it, because I'm a control freak, and my people can control it with me and tell me what to do. And that we absolutely sign up to being community-led rather than health-led. And they agreed, and hence here we go. So we developed the Community and Waverley Health and Partnership Board for Wellbeing. Now, you'll notice that from this point on, there are some little boho pictures. And the reason that there are boho pictures is I wanted it to be, apart from the fact that I like boho pictures, and I have to own that, but I wanted it to be perceived in all public spaces, we all did, that we are not health. And so how can we visually remind you that we're community and people orientated and softer, and here to listen and be sort of more embracive of the situation. So how we started up, and we had the purpose of the partnership to make sure that our communities thrive and live well for longer. That is what we can work together on as a local authority. We can work together to address the wider determinants of health and have a people-centred, holistic approach to health and well-being, focusing on people, not the patient. And I say that because the NHS are miles behind. They can't help it, because at the end of the day, they're clinicians, and clinicians have a thought process and a way, and you know, and we need that. We definitely need that. But at the PCN level, at the GP level, they don't often see the holistic side because they're here to prescribe or here to fix. So we needed to look at how we can share our agendas together with the GPs, that we're on the same space, and we're not there yet by a country mile. But one of the best PCNs in Surrey is west of Waverley. And that's because they have a clinical director as a GP who is superb and is really into this holistic well-being approach. And it's not just about stats, money coming in, or what can I prescribe. And I don't mean any disrespect, that's just how it's been programmed for so long. And we also wanted to be able to link in all our data to make sure that our insights are right and that we're doing the right thing for our community. So it's driven by community need, and that our strategies and objectives are all in the one place, and to ensure continuity across both places. So Frimley ICP and Guildford and Waverley ICP. The way we've done that, hence my flowers, is we have a partnership board, and then we have two distinct operational groups. And Katie and Jane lead the Waverley operational group. I lead the partnership board, and my colleagues and Katie and Jane's colleagues lead the Guildford and operational board. So we have become very distinct, with distinct identities that sometimes come across because there are certain issues that work together, but that's what's been important. And then we've identified key projects and working groups to enable to deliver that. So this is the operational model that is working really well right now. You will see that there are key partners in delivery. So we have more of a strategic oversight in the partnership board, and then we want the actual doers in the operational group. And there is a variety of people that are very important, but you'll see what I want to draw your attention to, if you can read it, is that the local authority teams are really invested in this. So under Katie and Jane, and Katie chairs the group, there's arts and culture and leisure are very much part of this as a wider health and wellbeing process, and they come to the groups and enable projects to happen. Obviously, we're going to be very dependent on adult social care workers, children's social care workers, etc. Now, our focus, which goes back to what Councillor Rabini was saying earlier, based on the data and the intel that we've had from our health partners, and indeed our own community insights, we wanted to address the mental health across all ages and demographics, because we have the capacity to influence that, not necessarily at a statutory level, but through a voluntary sector pooling of resources level, low level prevention and support. So that's why we focused on that, because it becomes a reality rather than some aspiration that we can't deliver. And secondly, as our place as a local authority to support the wider determinants of health, so we have the possibility to link in our housing colleagues if there are issues, antisocial behaviour, you know, all of those wider things that are important to health. And the excellent Thriving Commissioning Fund that is here in Waverley, that's administered by Jane and Katie, to make sure that what we're giving money to is fulfilling the corporate priority. And then we have a point of making sure we're not doubling up on funding with other people. Because the NHS fund, are we doing the same? Are we overlap? Can we go somewhere else? So we streamlined it to those two situations. And just a bit of data for you, I know that's quite difficult to read, but for Waverley, there is a huge intentional self-harm situation amongst young people, massive. West of Waverley and east of Waverley, some of the highest stats in the country. Very surprising to us, very surprising, but then it's there and in hospital admissions. It's also Waverley experiences a lot of young people in ER from self-harm, and that self-harm looks very different in many ways. We were talking this morning, the availability of buying paracetamol and razor blades, the availability of ordering online and getting stuff delivered, and your ability to go to different places. So you could go into Morrison's, you could then go into Asda, you could then go, you know, you could pick up your stuff as you need. Also, it's not a less advantaged situation. It's often people with great wealth and children with great wealth who feel lonely and isolated because parents are working a lot. Perhaps that, you know, there are lots of things in that area that is promoting this space. Which is quite shocking. And also generally in terms of loneliness, 1.5 for West Waverley and 1.7 for East Waverley, and 1 is around the average for the South East. So again, we then start to think about rural communities, older population, carers, and how that impacts on the sense of loneliness. So this particular data is what led us to our focus of thinking we can actually, through the Thriving Commissioning Fund, through volunteer agencies, voluntary sector agencies coming together, we can perhaps try and make a dent on some of the Waverley specific data, which is cool.
Can you just give me a rough guide?
Sure. So, do you mean in location?
Yeah, you're talking about it.
Yeah. So they've. Yes. So that would be east, and west would be.
No, west is Hazelmere.
West is Hazelmere. Yeah, west is Hazelmere. Sorry. So that's Hazelmere East. There is. So it's sort of Milford, Hazelmere, Greyswood. Then you've got in east Godalming, Binscombe. Godalming Central, Oxford Ridge, excuse me. So yeah, it's split according to PCN. So these are doctors' surgery groups, and they formed a conglomerate around both, and and they look after the west and the east. But I can send this through to you if you'd like to read it see it in a bit more detail. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. So what have we done since we first met? So again, this can be circulated to you, but since the 1st of April, which this year, which I hope you agree is quite fast paced for when we began this. So we've got 3 mental health support projects that we have facilitated through funding through local organisations, and that they're creative, they're artistic, they're there to help mental health support. So that's the Creative Response St Polycarp School and the Farnham Maltings and the Thrive Dance Company. So that is what we've sort of implemented immediately. The NHS have come to us as well with a mental health investment fund. And we've administered this at local level for them to ensure that there are local groups being serviced and also providing the provision. We received 26 expressions of interest. We shortlisted 15 and 4 currently have confirmed awards. So that's the Surrey Care Trust, Intergenerational Music Making, Emerge Advocacy, and there again is that group to support self-harm in the Royal Surrey. And Home Start, which is an early prevention for your younger families. So there's a lot beginning and moving forward on this. And then we've also identified what is coming soon and how we're doing it. And there is also the plan to involve the town and parish councils because they are essential in the community delivery. And that is, you know, some of the ideas that have come forward are to develop the creative arts, craft and cooking, family sessions. It's about bringing people together and enabling the ability to express. So camaraderie and expression, hopefully combating loneliness, establishing a social group for older people, community wellbeing marketplaces. So, and another very important one is the establishing of a second Andy's Man Club, because we often forget that men are the highest, one of the highest impacted when it comes to mental health and suicide. So that is what is coming. But I want to also draw your attention before taking any sort of questions, is that I've summarised here that there's a lot in place already, and I want to sort of flag that back to the preventative work that has been rooted. And what this has shown is that the NHS weren't aware of how much we actually do. So that has been really nice for them to understand, and they appreciate it tremendously. And we've definitely become a sought out voice for them to understand the impact. So you've got some information that was printed out for you in detail, but in summary, the Thriving Commissioning Fund, we fund 23 amazing organisations at the moment that support health and wellbeing, loneliness and social isolation. There are Waverley cultural projects, 4 of them that are going to be delivered to all ages that support mental health through arts and culture. And there are 7 projects by Leisure delivered in conjunction with their sports partners that improve physical activity. So we're on the ball. It's now just bringing the system around with us, as it were. So in terms of where we're going for the next bit, I can't stress enough the importance of us keeping the focus on people, not patients. We have to drag it back to that constantly in order to remain people focused. We are working to ensure our corporate priorities are weaved into the whole system. So it's not just us delivering health priorities, it's health also helping us deliver our corporate priorities, which is to respect and listen to our residents who are in need. And all of us at some point are in need. And to align our future Thriving Commissioning Fund objectives to the whole system success, which we are doing currently, but to keep going on that, and to build resilience in our partners and their ability to deliver projects and overcome the challenges as a partnership. It is a real challenge. We all speak different languages, and I get really stressed about it, and I get annoyed. I have to be frank. I mean, sometimes I'm like, what is this drivel? It has absolutely no impact in our world, but I understand what they're saying. But it's like, we've got to get it right for the people. We need to talk to the people and be on their level. So we're constantly trying to bring them back to keep that and to make their slides simple. But yeah, very important. And also what I would flag too is that, as I said at the beginning, our voluntary sector are so important, but they are struggling. They are really struggling. Funding is an issue, business savvy, you know, to sort of present the business cases that everyone is now requiring when it comes to monitoring what they're doing. it's really tough. You know, these are people with good hearts that want to deliver good service. And sometimes they are lambasted by the bureaucracy that's surrounding them. And again, COVID and the systems of COVID have impacted them, and the dramatic cuts in funding that everyone is experiencing, and budget tightening. So we're being asked to deliver a lot for nothing a lot of the time, and that's not sustainable for our voluntary sector at all. And also slightly is to be a voice, to hold the statutory agencies to account through lived-in experience. That's really important for us to get the community voice across to them to understand. And again, I keep referring to a meeting we had this morning, which was very timely, about suicide prevention. And it was absolutely essential for us as a group to make sure that the statutory partners knew the importance of wraparound care. And we can only get that across through the lived-in experiences of people who have experienced what is happening, being discharged at 6 o'clock at night with no one there, severe mental health needs, not being admitted because there aren't any beds, the reluctance to use the section 132 to admit people because there aren't any beds, they're back out and they're turning up to us for bed and breakfast, or they're turning up to the CAB for advice, or they're turning up to Guildford Action or wider support groups of homeless, and they're not getting any support at all. And then we wonder why things have happened the way they've happened. So our lived-in examples. And that, Chair, is pretty much, I'm sorry I've gone on for so long, but your feedback and your thoughts and questions would be most helpful to us to go forward. Thank
Right,
you.
I will obviously take questions, or I won't say them, I'll ask one to you. But I have to say, there is so much there that I personally would like to take a lot of this away and come back and have an in-depth discussion with you
Sure.
all again
Absolutely.
next week or next time, you know, we have a meeting, because it's just vast
Yes, it's
to
huge.
take in. But I have to say, thank goodness, you know, you three are in charge, because you're right about jargon. It's a terrible thing, and it should be
Yes.
banned.
Yes.
When I'm king or queen, I shall ban all jargon, because it does create barriers. Right, over to you, remembering the time, but please, if you can ask sensible questions. Sorry, were you just ahead of your husband? Sorry, Councillor Keane.
Sorry, dear. What a fabulous document. There was so much in there that I want to ask about, but I'm not going to now. I worked in the health service for
Yeah.
34 years. And there is so much I could say about the elderly being discharged early, COVID. It caused so many mental issues, and it also caused dementia.
Yes.
Because they couldn't talk to anybody for months on end, and they're lonely. You've got a lot of hidden residents within Waverley, very elderly.
Yep.
They go home, they sit on their own for hours and hours on end. They don't see a soul. With the men's clubs, fantastic for widowers, because you know they are lost. They are lost, and there's so much in this document that I absolutely love.
Great.
And I'd love to be involved in anything if you wanted us to
That would be great.
because I do understand where you're coming
Yes.
from.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rubini.
Thank you, Chair. I'll forgive you for inviting her first. Just three very quick things. First of all, to follow on what I was asking originally at the other bit. When you get these cases of individuals that have obviously not been treated right by, let's say, Surrey County Council, they've fallen through the gaps. Do you liaise with your local Surrey County councillor? Because obviously as a county councillor for the Hazelmere area, I've never had any contact from anybody to say that a case has not worked or whatever. And I could then take it to county council and ask what the hell is going on.
May I answer, Chair? Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Rubini. It's very noble, but we would be breaking safeguarding GDPR protocol in sharing information with someone who's not. If you, as much as I'd love it, I'd be like, here's a baseball bat, Councillor Rubini, can you go and sort it out? We can't quite do that within the system. So where I think it would be helpful is that in our working group, we have lots of community voices. So in our suicide prevention group, in our Guildford Waverley partnership group, if you wanted to be invited to that, to come along and work with us in that capacity, I would say that is probably a stronger place for you to then feed back generically and to ask for follow-up to the specifics that we have asked for. I think that's probably the best way around it, and I'm more than happy to extend it, you know, if you've got the time to come to us with that. But yeah, it's, and I think I have to say, the statutory services, to be very, very fair, are not wanting to do this. It's they are on their knees, and they'll say, you know, Katie, Jane, what do you want me to say? I haven't got it. I've not got a bed. I can't do it. I understand what you're saying, but I can't move. So it's so broken in that way that there needs to be a real overhaul of the system. And I don't think that is going to happen until lived-in experiences are shared.
Yeah, thanks for that. I would like the invitation, yes. I wasn't meaning perhaps to divulge individual people. I was looking at, for example, where you can see a pattern of things breaking down, because that's what happens. And it was more that sort of thing I'd want to bring to the council's attention, that they are failing within the SEND. We all know they're failing SEND children, for example. And there's no harm in bringing that up constantly, because we need to make sure it's still at the bubbling point.
More than happy to do that, councillor. And I think if you are happy to come to our board and be part of that strategically, then you have all the intel that you'd need to go forward with that. And also, in some ways, meet some of the partners that are the strategic partners to maybe influence them as well. So that would be great.
Councillor,
Yes,
can
thank you
I
very
take
much.
Councillor Busby now?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, amazing stuff, and obviously got off to a really good start. And I very much take your point about our role or as a local authority is to intervene at the very earliest possible stage. So even talking about listening to residents in need, but it's also those residents that perhaps aren't in need at the moment but are at risk of being in need, and stepping in at that very earliest point. And then the other thing is just the work of this partnership and us within it needs to be really made public, because there are so many businesses, I'm sure, across Waverley. In my village of Chiddingfold, I know our two pubs would be keen to contribute to this in some way. So not just sort of traditional delivery partners that perhaps have done projects before, but if people in my village and all over the place, if they knew some of those stats, and that it was in their community that this problem was happening, they'd want to do what they can to help.
I think that's really what we all feel, you know, that there's something we could all bring to this, but I don't know whether you all absorb information more quickly than I do, but I just really need some time now to get the slides from Kim, have a really good look at it. And if I could ask you all to come back, you're very, very patient. You've been superb. You've come along to us meeting after meeting. But, you know, it is such an important matter. And we know little local initiatives. But, you know, just speaking from my own experience, when I was first a teacher, it was in a really rough area in London. I mean, really, really rough. Used to eat the rats for Sunday lunch. I mean, it really was bad. But I could access all the services directly. I could go to social services. I could go to, you know, nobody stopped me doing my job. And then suddenly you get this layer of bureaucracy, and all of a sudden you can't do that. You've got to do it through so-and-so. And it helped nobody, because the number of children we helped at that comprehensive in a London before everybody started telling us how to do it was huge. And I fully understand what you're saying about, sort of the way people speak and the barriers they put up, you know, to protect their little bit or whatever. So if everyone's agreed, I would like to, yes, by all means, but I would just like to bring this back again if everyone's agreed with that. Yeah.
Looking at the numbers down here, it adds up to a lot of money. How are we actually getting this funding on a yearly basis? Because this is just for this 1 year. This is going to be ongoing for some considerable time now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The council to date have committed to the Thriving Communities Fund, and then we build it into the budget for approval each year. But you're absolutely right. If there comes a point where the council says we can't or we won't, it goes. It goes. And that is a difficulty and a challenge. And I guess then the question is that something that as a council we're committed to fund and what we think we should be doing as a council and our responsibilities, or is it something that sadly we're going to have to let go? And that is a councillor decision, absolutely. So the longevity of it depends on councillor commitment to the fund. Ladies, would you agree, or have I missed out anything?
No, I mean, it's absolutely true. One thing that we've noticed over the years is every year when we kind of look at the funds or we redo in the next 3 years is the commitment to still continue with our voluntary sector organisations. And I think, yeah, it is a huge risk. If we don't fund those, we won't necessarily have a Citizens Advice Bureau, we won't necessarily have a dial a ride service. You know, that those are the risks, and then those will impact wider those people that we're trying to deal with, because they're not, you know, we don't deliver them as an in-house service, unlike some other borough districts. And actually what we would say is extremely good value for money compared to if you delivered them all on the in-house. So, you know, for that, at the moment, we will always be cheeky and maybe ask for an uplift, because that's something we do. But for that 687,000 that we have annually, you know, if we look at value for money, we get a lot from it to help, and it delivers a wide variety of different services. So, yeah, we keep our fingers crossed each year, and we get to hopefully keep going.
Well, is everyone quite happy that we come back to this, having absorbed it all and looked at it? Because really fascinating. So thank you, all three of you. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for telling us about it tonight. As you say, when you look at the organisations that are part of this, we've all had experience of some of them and the work they do. And it really reduces you to tears sometimes to see the successes that they have. And, you know, I mean, it's peanuts really what we pay for it, isn't it? You know, compared to what we put into other things. So, you know, I do hope we can continue this to the future. But I do think, I get the impression that actually we want to be a bit more hands-on as a committee as well. Yeah. Anything we can do. So we'll take the information away, we'll digest it, we'll ask you if you wouldn't mind coming back for a more fulfilling perhaps question and answer, or just a round table where we can put our ideas forward, because I don't think there's anyone in this room who doesn't want to support you 100%. That's our recommendation. We support you 100%. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you. And I think that, Kim, is the end of the meeting. So thank you very much. I do apologise for interrupting your football. Oh, fine. Right. And safe journey home. Don't rush.